What if we could get past our past, break self-limiting beliefs, embrace our uniqueness, and finally achieve the goals, the desires, and the dreams that we have? Well, friend, the truth is that you can. And in today's episode, I sit down with a good friend of mine, Jason Van Ruler, who is a licensed therapist, wrote the book, Get Past Your Past, and he is helping us understand how you can do exactly that. Let's dive in to today's episode. Well, Jason, welcome to the show, my friend.
This has been so good. I've been looking forward to this conversation, so thanks for having me on.
Yeah, that's good. I feel like just certain circumstances have aligned where it's allowed us to really connect in a way where this is going to be more impactful than if it just been, hey, I've seen Jason do amazing work. I'd love to get him on my show, but I feel like we've been able to have some conversations leading up to this where we're going to really be able to help a lot of people because what I've learned about you is your heart is gold. You want to do it for the right reasons, and you truly want to make an impact so that people can live just a better, more meaningful life. And so I really appreciate that about you.
Oh, well, thank you so much. And I feel the same way about you. I mean, getting to know you better has just shown me you're passionate about people and your vision. And not only that, but about relationships, which is something I'm passionate about. So it's been a good connection.
Yeah, absolutely. Real quick, I guess, Jason, for maybe anyone that doesn't know you, go ahead and just give us a quick 1 to 2 minute overview. What do you do and why do you do it, if you would?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. And some days it's hard to answer.
Yeah.
The short answer is I'm a therapist, but I also speak and I've written a book and love to write and do social media. And so I do a lot of different things. But at the end of the day, I think the thing I try to do most is just help people have healthier relationships.
Yeah.
And that's something I've been passionate about my whole entire life.
Yeah.
Ever since being a little kid, I just felt like, boy, if I could help people have better relationships, that'd be great. And then have them on my own.
Yeah.
So I was the kid in middle school where everyone's like, I don't know what to tell this girl. Jason, what am I supposed to say? And I'd be like, let me try to figure it out. And probably offered very bad advice at that time, but I was doing my best, right?
Yeah,
I'm like, write this in the note, I don't know. But that's just been something on my heart for a long time. And so whatever I do, I think I do it around this idea that healthier relationships could change the world.
Yeah.
And so that drives my activity.
Yeah. I love that. And I've said this multiple times, and it kind of ends up being something that I say more than I probably even realize, but I feel that life is meant to be a team sport.
Yeah.
I feel that you need amazing people in your life to help you through life because life can be challenging, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure in the work you do, you hear the gamut of it. You hear all the different things that people are going through. And so it's navigating those relationships, obviously, yes, with humans, but then our relationship with all the things, our relationship with food, our relationship with finances, our relationship with you name it. And relationships, I feel, are so much more controlling in our lives, or can be, than we even realize.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, our whole life is relationship.
Yeah.
And it's, I think we don't know how to do that well, or we haven't had a good role model. We just replicate where we come from. And if you want to talk about what is hard to do, it is hard to be different if you don't have people that support you.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, especially around fitness, if you are surrounded by people who don't care about fitness, good luck. Right. Because you're swimming upstream, and that's really hard to do when people aren't helping you. And so whether it's fitness or it's emotional health or wellness or relationships, I think at the end of the day, like what's always said, and it's cliche, but it's true, is we become the people we spend time with.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes if we're not careful, we forget that.
Yeah, absolutely. Your surrounding is so important. And speaking of that, one thing I really wanted to dive into with you today is something about past traumas. Like your book, Get Past Your Past, is helping people understand that your past doesn't have to be your future and that you really are in control of writing your story. And I feel though, and I'm not the expert in this area, but even for me, is my belief of who I am has had to change so many times for me to become who I am today. And I have had imposter syndrome and I have had these different limiting beliefs that I've dealt with. But in the field that you work with, past traumas, past anything, I guess, that people go through that kind of help that set the tone for their life, what have you been able to find as, do people really have these past traumas that then even make it hard for them to navigate health and fitness?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Because I think it becomes who we are and
Okay.
it becomes the thing that guides us, whether we acknowledge that or not. Right. If you can imagine if you broke your leg as a kid, but you never had it set, you never fixed it, you never had a cast, how would that impact you as an adult?
Yeah.
Right. Well, running would be really hard, right? You'd probably be in constant pain. You'd have all these issues because you never really dealt with it. And trauma and wounding as a kid is a lot the same, right? Is
Sure.
it's sort of like these are the broken bones. But I think when it comes to like our emotional health, we tend to say just walk it off,
Yeah.
right? You're like, my leg is broken. Hey, just walk it off. And so we get so used to walking it off that it becomes a part of who we are.
Yeah.
And then we don't even realize it's broken.
Yeah.
Right. And so we get into these places where we struggle because the life we're leading isn't the one we're called to,
Sure.
but it's the only one we can live if we don't deal with our stuff.
Yeah. Where do you think the Get Past Your Past, your whole book, the whole everything that you wrote about, why was that what you were, because you told me you got some more books coming that you're working on, but why was that kind of what you wrote about first?
Yeah, because I think that's the origin of all of it, right?
Okay.
So often I would work with people and they would tell me a story about their childhood or they'd tell me a story about past hurt and they'd never dealt with it. And then wouldn't you know it, they tell me a story about today. And it would be the exact same thing, right? They'd say like, I don't know, it's the weirdest thing. I grew up in a broken home and now I'm in a broken relationship.
Yeah.
You're like, I wonder where that came from. And so part of the reason I wanted to talk about that is because if we don't change that, it just impacts and influences everything else, right?
Yeah.
I can teach you all the communication skills and conflict skills, but if what's underpinning that is broken,
Yeah.
you're going to go back to it. And really kind of selfishly, this was all the result of my own work too, because I lived it, right? So not only professionally am I passionate about it, but I had my own brokenness. And so I looked at what's made the biggest impact for me, and it's been dealing with the things that made an impact on me when I was younger.
Sure. You know, I think that that's super impactful to just recognize. We have to recognize when there are past issues that we need to deal with. But how does a person do that if they don't? Because if we knew what we needed to fix, you would assume that we'd fix it. So I'm somewhat led to believe that so many of us, we get into these cycles of life where we keep seeing the same behaviors and the same patterns, but somehow we're not seeing it. So how can we start to recognize, when do we realize when, oh, hey, there's something I should probably dig into? How can you recognize that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I mean, I think people want to change, they just don't know how.
Yeah.
But I think the first place we look is, where am I stuck?
Okay.
And then to really just ask a deeper question of, why do I think I'm stuck?
Yeah.
So many people have problem awareness. They're like, this is the problem and I'm sticking with the problem. But my question is always, what's underneath that?
Sure.
Right? So look under that and say, like, what do I think that's really about? And you can talk to a friend or a trusted mentor or therapist or anybody, but it's starting to ask a different question is usually the first step.
Yeah.
Right? Just acknowledging the problem doesn't fix anything. Right?
Yeah.
If you say, hey, my leg's broken, like that doesn't heal your leg. It just tells us you have an issue.
Right.
And so I think at the end of the day, like asking better questions, asking questions about where it comes from is really the start of that process.
Yeah. Asking questions can be difficult.
Yeah.
Right? Especially the questions to someone that can help you. And, you know, I feel like for a while, and maybe even still to this day, there is something like a negative kind of weight that goes along with like seeing a mental health therapist. Like there's this negative kind of feeling of like, oh, you are seeing a mental health therapist, like you must be messed up. But I feel like that's totally not the truth. And if I'm being honest, I think all of us, you know, should have somebody that we're going to that's helping us navigate through the issues. So how do we help someone realize it's okay to ask questions and get the help?
Yeah. And that's tough because, again, it kind of depends on where we grew up and what we've been taught. You
Yeah.
know, as a Midwesterner my whole life, you know, we don't ask for help. That's sort of against the rules.
Yeah.
You just do it yourself. And so it can feel like you're doing the wrong thing to tell someone you're struggling.
Yeah.
But here's what I know just in my work and working with lots of different people is people connect on struggles.
Yeah.
I wish it were different, right? But
Yeah.
but people don't really connect on success. They connect on struggles. If
Yeah.
you think about people in your life in moments where you felt most deeply connected, it was probably over a struggle,
Yeah.
right? And what we do instead is we say, well, I'll only tell the success.
Yeah.
And it makes it hard to get close to people. And so I don't think you have to walk around telling everybody your problems, right? That's
Yeah.
not my suggestion. But I think you have to tell people who care, who could help you about what's really going on.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's an easy fix.
Mhm.
You know, the thing that I would say is like, yes, I am kind of the dentist of the mental health world, right?
Okay.
Nobody's excited to see me. They're not like, oh, I can't wait to see Jason. It's more like, I got a cavity I got to work on.
Right.
And I get it. But here's the question I'd ask. If you dealt with the cavity and it saved your marriage, would it be worth it?
Yeah.
Yeah. If you dealt with the cavity and you achieved your goal, would it be worth it? If you dealt with the cavity and you lost the weight you want to lose, would it be worth it? And so I think at the end of the day, like if you're trying a bunch of stuff that hasn't worked, why not try something new?
Yeah. I think to that point, I would love to drive home the fact for people. Everybody watching or listening, I can't say everybody, I'm talking absolutes,
Right.
but so many people have tried something for
Yep.
their health and their fitness. And they've tried this program or they've tried that program. And
Sure.
holy smokes, Jason, you know as well as I do, you go on the internet and you can find a different diet for any different way to live. You can find a different exercise. You can stand on a shaking plate and lose weight. You can do
That doesn't work. That works. Come on, man.
It works
That
for somebody.
works.
It had to work
It
for
works
somebody.
for somebody somewhere. Yes.
And so if somebody's tried one of these other things
Mhm.
and it hasn't worked, to your point, what you just said is try something else.
Right.
Right. And so I don't know if Fit Body is going to be the solution. I don't know if yoga, if whatever, but we need to be willing to try new things.
Mhm.
How do you encourage someone that is so against, like, I've tried all the things and they haven't worked. I'm done trying. How do you encourage someone to reset that mindset?
Yeah. I mean, I think the decision at that point is just change or accept the circumstance.
Yeah.
Right. So I just say like, hey, that's no problem. Does that mean we're accepting where you're at?
Yeah.
Right. Well, yes, I am. Okay. Well, then, I mean, there's not a whole lot to talk about. Right. But
Yeah.
if they say, well, I've tried everything and I refuse to accept it, all we can really do is try one more
Try
thing.
something else.
And I think at the end of the day, like that's actually the beauty of life.
Yeah.
Is trying new things. That's where you meet new people. You have new relationships. But a lot of people are afraid of that. And so when someone says to me, well, I've tried everything.
Yeah.
My knee-jerk response is usually, well, show me the list.
Yeah.
Okay. Show me the list. How many things are there? And I got to tell you, not many people ever have a list.
Right.
They have one thing or two things. And I just like, maybe those are great efforts, but now let's try another thing.
Yeah. And you never know also too, the different circumstances in life. You may finally try one of the same things you've already tried, but just the different circumstances and where you're at in life play out different.
Mhm.
And this time it might work.
Yeah.
Right. Because sometimes I'm sure you've even in your business have talked with somebody and they just weren't ready to make that change. And then life, and they come back and maybe now it's like, wow, here we are a couple years later and you are just doing amazing. And it was because the circumstances and they weren't ready to make that change. And so how do we get ready to make a change? How do we know when we're ready?
Well, that's a good question. You're tired of living how you've been living.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the start. And I think I love what you brought up because now when people talk about that is we're not always going to get the result we want.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just not going to be for us at that time. But to your point, sometimes people come back and they say, Jason, we spoke. I wasn't ready. I'm ready now. And
Yep.
everything's different.
Yep.
And I go, well, I'm still the same guy. Like my jokes are still the same.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to tell you all the same stuff.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason in that moment, it's different for them.
Yeah.
Because they're willing to listen.
Yeah.
And I think we all have that. I've been that person where I've gone, man, I hear it. It's true. I'm just not really willing to listen to it yet.
Yeah.
And so I think just the willingness to keep trying is really the core thing. And then openness and being willing to be curious is really helpful too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's such good advice to people is as long as you're willing to keep trying,
Mm-hmm.
you will eventually get there.
Yep.
And I was talking with Nate. I don't know if you know Nate Welch. I mean, you know him, but I don't know how well you know him. He was at
Okay.
the ResGen men's retreat that we got to be on a few months back now. But we were talking about so many times we all see the success of everything because that's what life is anymore. Like you just said, everybody highlights their success.
Yep.
We don't see what it took for that person to get there. And so if you're not at the success that you want to be at, then guess what? You're somewhere in that journey that no one's sharing. And so you keep going, and eventually you're going to be able to tell that story of how you finally reached the relationship that you're after, reached the weight loss that you're after, reached the insert any goal, and you'll get to share that as long as you don't give up.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah. Most people talk about the beginning or the end.
Yeah.
They don't talk about the messy middle.
Yeah.
The messy middle is so lonely because you're seemingly in there all on your own, right? It's like I'm in the place where I'm doing the push-ups, but I'm not losing weight, or I'm eating better, but it's not changing a whole lot. People don't talk about that because the best time to talk about a problem is when you've solved it already.
Yeah.
Hey, here's a problem I've got. I solved it like a year ago, but I want to tell you. That's kind of what we do.
Yeah.
Or we just talk about the problem.
Yeah.
But not a lot of people say, I've got a problem. I'm like halfway through working through it. And man, it's kind of messy right now. It's not my favorite. That conversation doesn't happen. But if it did, we'd get the encouragement we needed.
Absolutely. And when you surround yourself by people that want to see the best in you, they want to be encouraging you that, you know what, it's messy right now.
Yeah.
But you're keeping your head up. You're keeping on going. And that is what's needed. And so that's why it's really good to talk about that stuff when you're in the middle of it.
Yeah, definitely.
And I feel like for you, probably more than most, you get to talk about the messy middle because people come to you to talk about that, right? And so you're able to help see all the mess that people go through, and then you're also able to see where they come out on the other side. One thing I'd love to talk about, Jason, is you talk about relationships and how it's always, since you were young, something that led you in a positive direction that you really wanted to focus more on. When did you decide that you wanted to go into the field that you're in now?
Wow. Well, I decided I want to be a therapist when I was 8. So
For real?
Yeah. I have a journal because I journaled at 8, which should have been my first clue. I'm probably going to be a therapist, but I literally journaled, I want to be a therapist. I want to help people. I journaled about what I want my office to look like.
Really?
I want to write a book. I really did it. And I always joke with people, it's because I dress like a therapist already. So I was already in the field and I was an overthinker. So I was like, if I could get paid to do what I do naturally, this is going to be such a good fit. But I think I always want to do that. I had a business for a while. And so I pursued a different path, but I just felt called. And I think it was really when I just surrendered to the life I was called to that it led me back to therapy.
Okay.
Therapy's been really impactful in my own life. And so a thing is when you work through a hard thing, you want to help other people work through it.
Yeah.
There's something really redeeming about, I'm a guy, I've gained a lot of weight. I've lost a lot of weight. I love to see people lose weight. You probably do too, right?
I love it.
Because I know what it feels like.
Yeah.
And so I think therapy was like that for me where I go, it could be easier and let me help.
Yeah. Absolutely. So you kind of felt that calling when you were 8.
Yeah.
You said you led on to having a different business, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Well, can I ask, what was that business?
Yeah. I was in recruiting. So I was connecting people with jobs. So it was still relational. It was just a little bit different. So I love that. And that was great. But for me, I just thought I'm a big origin guy. So I go, what is the origin of this?
Yeah.
And how do I get to the heart of the matter? And so recruiting was great, but it wasn't really the heart of the matter.
Sure.
And so I think I became kind of a therapeutic recruiter
Sure.
where I'd go, well, tell me about why you want the new job. And we'd have these really deep conversations. And I just felt like that's actually what I want.
Yeah.
I don't care about the job part so much. I just want to help you get better. And so that led me back to it.
Yeah, that's awesome. So when did you go into business for yourself?
Yeah, so that was in my 20s. And then I got married. And shortly after getting married, I went to my wife and I just said, hey, wouldn't it be so cool if I became a therapist and I made half of what I make now? And I remember she's loved me so much. And she's like, oh, yeah, that sounds really cool. And I was like, but what if I spend a lot of money on college tuition first? And she's like, you're really selling me on this. And so at that time, it just seemed like a big dream.
Yeah.
But I went to school, I finished my bachelor's, I got my master's, I got another master's. I just kept taking the next step.
Yeah.
And here I am today.
Yeah.
But I can't say I knew I'd be here today.
Yeah.
Right. I might have visualized being a therapist and doing some of the things I've done, but I didn't know it'd lead me here. I just took the next step.
Yeah. So let's actually kind of unpack that a little bit if we can, as it pertains to someone that's on a health and fitness journey.
Yeah.
Because to me, what that sounds like is like you want to lose 100 pounds.
Yeah.
You don't know that you'll actually be there, but you visualized it. So you visualized that you wanted to be a mental health therapist or a therapist, and then you just kept taking the next step. So how could we help somebody watching or listening that wants to make a big change in their health or fitness? How can we help them understand that that big goal needs to happen, but that can't be the only thing we fixate on? What would be your advice on that?
That's a really good question, because I think especially around weight loss, we get so focused on a number, right? It's I want to lose X amount of pounds and I'm unhappy until I get there. And I think for a lot of us, maybe you lose 110, maybe you lose 90, maybe, I don't know, what is success, right? So I think it's good to have the larger goal, but then just to say like life is actually the process.
Yeah.
The goal is great. Life is the process. And so if you're looking to do something big, the challenge is you don't know what you don't know.
Yep.
So I have encountered problems and obstacles to get here today I never could have expected.
Yeah.
I could not have planned on having them, but I just had them and I worked through them.
Yeah.
So I think what I tell a lot of people, whether it's fitness or whatever it is, you just take the next right step.
Yeah.
And if you don't know what it is, ask.
Yeah.
And you ask somebody who's likely to know. Right.
Yeah.
So if I were, wanting to lose 100 pounds and I didn't know what to do, I'd call you.
Yeah.
And I'd say, hey, what's the next step I should take?
Yeah.
And then I do it.
Yeah.
And so I tell a lot of people, I'm actually a pretty simple guy. People are like, how'd you do all this stuff? And I just do the next thing.
Yeah.
And I had people to tell me what to do along the way.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's really it. It's that simple if you want it to be.
Yeah, just keep on taking one step, asking for help. When I think about kind of where I'm at with Fit Body and where we've been able to grow to, I think that I've been able to get there because I just ask for help. Like I don't know what to do, and I'm okay with that. But I'm gonna find someone that'll help me, and I'll just ask. And I almost think that my unknowledge, if that's a word.
It is now.
Okay, it is now.
I love it.
Mark it. My unknowledge, so me not knowing what to do, has actually been a superpower to me. Just like, I don't know what to do. Yep. So I'm going to ask anybody. And when that person tells me something, does it feel right? I'll try it. And if it doesn't work, I don't mean stop. I go find someone else. Like, hey, what would you do? And we just keep on asking that question. So I love that. And I think that, like you said, you wanted to be where you're at today. Years ago. If it happened, sweet.
Awesome.
If it didn't happen, hey, life is the process and I can enjoy the journey. Can you help speak to, though, how can we enjoy the journey when the journey isn't enjoyable?
Why isn't it enjoyable? What is not enjoyable about it?
We're hitting walls. We're getting setbacks. We feel that we're trying what people are telling us and it isn't clicking. I'm not happy with eating the food that my coach is telling me to eat. I'm like, it just feels like we're hitting all these roadblocks because people get into slums, right?
Yeah.
So how do we help them enjoy that when in their mind it's not enjoyable?
Yeah, I think you have to redefine that.
Okay.
So I think we tell ourselves what to think about what we're doing.
Yeah.
And so if you go, well, I'm going to hate this, you probably will.
Yep.
Right. I'm going to be miserable. Okay, you probably will. I think the other thing that's really been a life changer for me is I see new things, especially hard things, as just data.
Yeah.
So I go, I'm just collecting data. Yeah. I'm going to try this thing. I have no idea if it's going to work. Probably it's not going to be my favorite, but it's data to see if it worked or not.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go do this thing. I'm going to go run this race. I'm going to work out and do this thing. I'm going to eat this thing and I'm going to see what happens.
Yeah.
And so what I tell myself is instead of I have to do this to get a specific outcome, I say what I'm actually doing is research.
Yeah.
So it's just research to see what works.
Trying.
And some things will work and some things won't work, but it's all just good data. And I think when we approach life that way, what happens is we actually learn and it gets better.
Yeah.
The other thing I would say is changing your relationship with difficult things is really important.
Yeah.
Life is not supposed to be easy.
Yeah.
And so sometimes we do this thing where we're allowed certain feelings and not others.
Yeah.
And so we go, I can only be happy.
Yep.
And if something doesn't make me happy, I can't do it.
Yeah.
All right, well, that's not going to last long, right? We're soon going to be really uncomfortable and unhappy. And so what I'll say to people is there are places where your emotions should drive.
Okay.
right? There are places where you should say, like, how I feel about something matters the most.
Yep.
Then there are places where how you feel about things shouldn't matter the most.
Okay.
Okay. How I feel about eating ice cream is I love it. Totally want to do it.
Yeah, I love that too.
Okay. But if I want to lose weight,
Yeah.
how I feel doesn't matter.
Right.
Okay. Because what matters more is it's not going to help me do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so what happens is sometimes we have to say it's okay to have a feeling I don't act on.
Yeah.
Right. Sometimes how I feel doesn't matter. If you think about like when you go to the doctor and you're going to have surgery, do you care how your surgeon feels?
Nope.
No, nobody's going like, hey, how are you doing? I want to talk to you about your feelings.
Right.
You just go, hey, can you do your job or not?
Right.
Right. And so some things in our life are just, can you do your job or not?
Yeah.
If this is the plan and I need to run or I need to lift, can you do it?
Yeah.
And the feeling part, I mean, it's not that your feelings don't matter, but they don't need to guide us here.
Absolutely. Where did that come from? Where did the fact that we allow our feelings to dictate our level of happiness, like where do you think that comes from? Because I do think that it is way more apparent in everybody's life than we even realize. Because I do it in my own life. If I'm going through a difficult period with my wife, man, now we're just arguing and we're not happy. And it's like, well, why? We just have difference of opinions. It doesn't mean that we need to argue. It doesn't mean we need to not be happy. So where is this logic coming from where we think we need to let our feelings dictate our level of happiness?
Yeah, I mean, I think it comes from being comfortable. You know, a lot of us in these generations now, we've had it so that we have some sense of comfort and stability.
Yeah.
And so when you have some sense of comfort and stability, and I know story is different for everybody. Some people would say, well, I haven't, Jason, but just generally speaking, when you have that, you can start to think about feelings.
Yeah.
Right? If you think about like in the world wars, no one was asking how you felt.
Yeah.
You're just trying to get by, right? Nobody was like, hey, do you feel good about this? Or how do you feel? Didn't matter, right?
Yep.
So we get to this place now where we go, hey, our feelings matter. And we did the thing we always do, which is we go a little too far and we say, now our feelings are everything.
Yeah.
And the problem with that is what we recognize is like the opposite of one extreme is another.
Yeah.
And so now we find ourselves in a place where we go, man, if I just only make decisions based off my feelings, I'm unhappy with that too.
Yeah.
And so really the goal is learning how to discern when to switch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Is understanding how to navigate that because it's not always bad.
No.
But it's not always good.
And can you feel uncomfortable and do it anyway?
Yeah.
So that's always the question I'm asking myself. So I'm like, oh, I don't want to do this. I don't like it. I'm uncomfortable. And the question is, am I allowed to feel uncomfortable and do it anyway because I know it's right?
Yeah. And who allows you, right? You said, like, am I allowed to? Who's that person allowing you?
Yeah, it's me.
It's you.
Yeah, it's me.
It's so important to understand that. You know, I feel that feelings are huge. How does a person start to accept who they are? Because the world we live in, social media, oh my goodness, man, like everything is you need to be this way or that way or dress this way or dress that way. So how can a person become confident in who they are to then be able to truly achieve their goals? Because I feel like one thing, and it isn't talked about a ton, but I feel like so many of us are trying to achieve somebody else's success.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
How do we learn that we need to define our own success and that that's what needs to be what we're after?
Yeah.
How can we learn
Yeah, well,
that?
it's the difference between looking at it as a map or a blueprint, right? A blueprint tells us exactly what to do to build something. A lot of people find somebody else's blueprint and they try to build what they built. We're looking just for a map. We're just saying, how do I get to that general area? And I'll figure out what that looks like. So I think for a lot of people, confidence is just keeping your word to yourself. The easiest way to build confidence is to just keep your word with yourself. If you say you're going to do it, do it.
Yeah.
Stick to it or don't say it.
Yeah.
And as we do that, we get confident in who we are. I think the other thing is just recognizing one of the beautiful things about who we are is we're not for everybody. And so trying to be everybody is always going to fail because we're unique.
Yep.
And so you just say, who am I really? And what do I actually want to do that fits me?
Yeah.
Because there's nothing worse than building somebody else's goal and even getting it and then being lonely.
Yeah.
I talk to so many people who go, well, I did all the things somebody told me to do, and now I've got everything, and I hate it because it's not me.
Yeah.
And so you have to recognize, like, even if you pull it off, which is unlikely, probably you're not going to love it because it's not you.
It's not you.
Yeah. And so it's okay to want it to be different, but to use other people's ideas to help you get there, but get in the general area.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I absolutely love that. And I mean, I feel like we could keep talking.
Yeah.
I mean, how long we've been talking for, I don't know, 25, 30 minutes
Yeah.
or so. I'd love to be able to talk to someone with you,
Mhm.
someone listening. All right, I've decided I want to make a change. I've decided I'm going to take the next steps. Now what?
Mhm.
What do I do? Like you said, are you going to accept the circumstances or are you going to make a change? That's
Mhm.
kind of when you said like that's where that feeling comes from, and that's where you then decide it's time to do something. Let's help them lay out a blueprint that can be adapted to them.
Mhm.
So really, like you said, a blueprint or a map. It
Yeah.
is a map, but it's going to be a blueprint that you can then tailor to yourself.
Mhm.
So let's talk through that. You've decided you're ready to change.
Yep.
Now what?
Yeah.
What does this person do now?
The first step should
Mhm.
be stupid easy to do.
Okay.
It should be so easy. You're like, of course, right?
Yep.
So let's say you want to lose weight, you want to get in shape. Okay, how easy is it to submit a form online?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. It'll take about 20 seconds.
Yep.
Okay, can you do that? That's your one task today.
Yeah.
And you go, yeah, I can do that. Okay, well, great. You did it.
Yep.
That's it. Can you do 5 push-ups? Can you do the smallest thing? So what I'm always challenging people to do that want to change is to make the easiest, smallest change over and over again so we get more confidence,
Yeah.
right? Because what a lot of people do is they aim too high or too far out, and then they miss it right off the bat, and
Sure.
their confidence is just blown up.
Yeah.
And so I'd say, what's just the next very, very easy thing you can do, which is an easy yes?
Yeah.
If it's not an easy yes, don't start there.
Sure.
Because the easy yes will lead to the harder yes, which will lead to the difficult yes, and then that'll lead to change.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I love that. So we're building the confidence by just doing the easiest thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that because you're right. So many people are like, they need to change everything. So let's start with the small change. What about you've decided you're going to change, and we've already talked about it, and people know you are like who you surround yourself with.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, oh man, let's just obviously health and fitness podcast.
Yeah.
I own the gyms. Let's talk about that. Let's keep that as our North Star.
Yep.
All right. I want to make a change in my health and fitness. My friends that I hang out with, none of them do. What do I do? What do I do there? How do I make that change?
Change all your friends, obviously.
Right now, today.
Is that too much to ask?
Group
switch it
text.
We're done. No, I mean, I think it's who can I surround myself with that's going to make it easy for me to do this?
Yeah.
And if it's not my present friend group, that's fine. Maybe that'll change down the road. But where do I go to find the people who will?
Yeah.
And so you would go to a fitness gym or to a community of people who are like-minded, and you just say, I've kind of got this big goal dream, and you want to find people who go, that's awesome. I want to help you with that.
Let's go.
If you're saying that and the people around you are like, that's stupid, don't do it.
Yeah.
Probably not your people for that goal.
Yeah.
And it's okay to have more than one friend.
Yeah.
Right? So it's okay to have some friends who go, I don't really get it. And then have a lot of other friends who go, I love this about you. Like we can live in both places.
Yeah.
I've got some good friends who run ultra marathons, and I mean, I would like to do it, but I don't really get it.
Yeah.
Right. And I was like, that's cool, but you probably don't come to me for advice.
Yeah.
But they've got their own friends that they go, they're really helpful. So I think it's just sort of find the people who make it easy for you to be that person.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because any resistance when we want to make change is going to slow us down.
Yeah. Can you help dive into, I've heard this statement and I've been able to do it well, I think, but how can you edit or eliminate relationships? And do you have any good advice on that? Because let's say the friend group that you have, like that's all you've had. And that's like what you really feel like is where you're most self at, but you know that's not the group that's going to get you to where you want to go. Mm-hmm. And maybe some of those people are friends that maybe they're family. Maybe you live with them or you see them often. So what advice do you have with that? You're talked about changing your friend group, and you can have both, but what are some good advice you have on how you could edit and or eliminate relationships to move you closer to the direction that you want to go?
Yeah, it's just basically, will they tolerate you being different?
Okay.
Right. So if I say, suddenly I'm really interested in fitness and I want to lose weight and get healthy, and my friend group goes, okay, that's cool for you. We don't really care, but that's great for you.
Yep.
Fine. That works. If they say, we hate that about you and you're not allowed.
Yep.
Yeah, that's difficult. Right.
Yep.
I think at that point, it just becomes a question of, is this what our relationship's about?
Yeah.
Right. Is my getting healthy a threat to you? And if it is, what do we do with that?
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of times, though, people will tolerate it.
Yeah.
You know, they might say, oh, you're going to talk about the thing again. Oh, you talk about whey protein today. And you go, yeah, I guess. But I think really it's just looking to the people in our life and saying, can they tolerate me being different? Can they respect that it's important to me? And can I have boundaries? And then if the answer to that is no, Then my question is, so these are your friends, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. These are your friends. It doesn't sound like it. So
Yeah.
what do we do with that?
Yeah, absolutely. So you're editing, you're eliminating those relationships, and more likely than not, you're keeping them. You're keeping them. You're just they're not the ones that are going to be your go-to when you have the questions about that goal.
Correct.
Right. And so maybe you're not able to go out with them as often. Okay. So now how about this though? Let's talk about that person that has made a change. And now all of a sudden they have found a new group that's accepting of them, that helps them, that does motivate and push them. But now they're actually getting like a lot of kind of grief from the other group because they feel like, now what? We're not good enough for you? How do you navigate that?
Yeah. So good question. Very good question. My answer to that is always invite people along.
Okay.
So I would just say, CJ, I've gotten a lot healthier, and that is probably weird for you if that's not important to you. But why don't you come to the gym with me?
Sure.
So what I do is I just always say, like, I want you along for the ride. Do you not want to go?
Yeah.
And then I let that person decide. So if they go, yeah, you've really changed, and I don't want to go with you to the new place, so I quit. Well, that's your decision, not mine. But I'm inviting you there.
Yeah.
And so I think that really helps us identify kind of who our friends are, is we just say, yeah, I want to spend time with you too. It just looks like this now. And I mean, you've got good friends, real friends. Most of them would come with, right?
Yeah.
They might say, it's kind of weird. I don't really get it, but I really love them. So I'm going to go. I'll try it out, or I'll see. Or so I think it's just kind of discerning, like, are you willing to come along? And then are you willing to give that to them?
Sure.
So if they go, I've got this passion and I don't really get it. Like, are you willing to help them too?
Yeah. I love that. So yeah, taking them along. Okay, so we've kind of navigated that a little bit. So now we've made the decision. We're taking the easy yeses. We've talked a little bit about how we can navigate the friend groups.
Yep.
What do we do to then, you said celebrate the small wins. What does that look like? How do you celebrate small wins to make sure that you keep on doing it? Like, what are some of your best practices for ways to celebrate that are very practical that anybody can do?
Yeah, I think it's different for everybody, and it's different depending on the thing you're doing, right?
Okay.
If you go, well, I'm trying to lose a lot of weight and I want to celebrate with an ice cream cake.
Yes.
Okay, maybe it's a
We're
little
back to day one.
counter to our goal. So I think it's what way can I celebrate that actually empowers me to feel better about myself?
Yeah.
And some of it sometimes is just telling somebody who cares and asking them for affirmation.
Yeah.
Just saying like, hey, I hit a weight loss goal, and this is really important. I want to tell you about it.
Yeah.
And you go, cool, I see that. You guys do a really cool thing where you celebrate the sessions. I always love that. You celebrate sessions, or sometimes I think weight loss or things like that. But find people who go, hey, I see you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't, I think celebration, you can do all the party favors and all. It doesn't have to be that complicated.
Yep.
A lot of times it's just, do you see me trying?
Yeah.
And then how do people see that? And then I think for you, what matters? You know, what matters to you to celebrate this?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. And again, it goes back to different for you than it is for me. And it doesn't have to be the same.
Right.
But so many times we do think like, oh, well, they're celebrating this way. Well, I am not financially able to do that, or I'm not in a position to do that.
Yeah, my favorite celebration is a private jet to Mexico. Yeah, so, okay, well, I don't get to celebrate very often, right? It's like every decade maybe, but, you know, so it's kind of like, is it accessible?
Right.
Yeah, is it for me? You know, how does that work?
Yeah, I love that. I think that that's great. Just great advice. You know, I really do feel that you've given some awesome practical, tips to helping people understand that they're on their own journey. They don't have to let their feelings dictate what they do. You know, what else would you say is, as we've been talking, is there any other area that's popped up in your mind of like, I just really want someone to know this? Is there anything popped up in your mind right now?
Yeah. I mean, I think the thing we don't talk about a lot is just you have permission to reach your potential. And some people never hear that. Yeah. They're held down, or they've got these limiting beliefs. And so what I just say is like, if you're hearing this and you go, well, I don't know if that's me, you have permission. Yeah. Yeah. It's a weird job that I have, but I spend a lot of time just giving people permission to be better. Yeah. They come in and they go like, I don't know, I've had these experiences. I don't know if I deserve it. I just go, I think you do. Yeah. And it's weird. People go, okay, well, I'll try it then. Yeah. And so I think if you're listening to this and you just need to hear that, you are worth it, and you have permission to do the next thing.
I love that. You know what? That actually leads me to one more thing I want to touch on. And we were talking about it before we hit the record button, which is honestly when most of the magic happens. Yeah. But we were talking about, you said that these kind of self-limiting beliefs happen so much when we're a child. And you just happen to use, we were just talking, and you just happen to use the one like, what if somebody says you're a fat kid?
Yep.
And next thing you know, that narrative is playing in your head. Well, now you actually end up growing up and you start acting like that.
Mm-hmm.
So how can we identify self-limiting beliefs? So number one, let's start there. How can we identify self-limiting beliefs? And then how can we overcome them?
Yeah. So the question is what I'm telling myself helpful?
Okay.
And if the answer is no, then we got to look at it a little bit.
Okay.
So it's kind of like, well, I'm the fat kid. Okay. Is that helpful to me? Not really, right?
Yeah.
That's not helpful. Okay. So then my question to people usually is, where did that come from? If you always go, what are you talking about? I'm like, well, who told you that first? Was that a thing you decided? Was it something somebody said to you? Was it an experience you had? But kind of go back to the origin. And then is it true?
Yeah.
Right. And a lot of times what happens is there was maybe some truth in the moment and maybe not, but sometimes we just take away from that experience that we are that person because what kids do is everything's about them.
Yeah.
If you have kids and there's a problem, they assume it's to do with them.
Yeah.
You know, one of my favorite things to say like, hey, there's this issue. And all my kids are like, well, I didn't do it.
Yeah.
Well, why do they say that? Because they just imagine if there's an issue, they must be responsible.
Yeah.
So what we do as kids is when we hear a problem, we just believe it must be us.
Yeah.
And so if the problem is, you know, I'm the fat kid, we go, well, I'm the fat kid. Right? We don't think, well, maybe that person's just mean, or maybe that person's got a problem with their own weight, or we don't ask those questions. We just assume it's us.
Sure.
And so it's really helpful to just say, like, is it helpful? Is it true? Whose voice is that? And do I want it to be the same going forward?
Yeah.
So if I don't like this about myself, what is a more helpful thing to say? Right? Well, it's maybe I've struggled with my weight in the past, but I don't have to. Maybe that's the more helpful thing, or I'm changing that. Or we have to just look at like what we tell ourselves becomes true because we make it true.
So do you have any awesome ninja therapist tricks that help a person redefine their self-belief? What helps a person? Okay, cool. I've now recognized that what I'm telling myself isn't helping me. I've now recognized that I should probably change that narrative, but I'm just struggling. I tell myself, I don't need to be the fat kid. I've always felt like I was, and I've allowed that to be a belief of mine. I heard Jason say I don't need that to be, but I'm just struggling to believe that I'm anything else.
Yeah.
What's a ninja therapist trick?
Oh, I don't know if it's ninja, but I'll tell you this. What evidence do you have to prove that wrong?
Okay.
So sometimes the challenge we have is it's hard to change a limiting belief if we're not doing anything to change it. Okay. So if you go, I've always felt like I'm out of shape, and I go, okay, well, when's the last time you worked out? You're like, well, I don't work out.
Okay.
It might be kind of accurate then. So part of it is we need to counter that belief with fact. And that's the easiest way to fix it. Is you go, well, I'm not that person because here's 5 things that I'm doing to try to work through it. The other thing is a friend of mine, John Acuff, wrote a book called Soundtracks, and it talks a lot about this. So reading that book could really help you. But I think it's just recognizing like you have the ability to set what's true about yourself as an adult. You didn't as a kid. You just had to believe it. But as an adult, you get to choose. You're the architect.
Yeah.
And so you get to choose that. And what do you choose it to be? And I think too, if you're a faith person, you might say, what is God telling you about this?
Yeah.
Is that a message from God that I'm this bad thing?
Yeah.
Probably not. Right.
Yeah.
So then that's probably not helpful to me.
Yeah. I love that. Just tying it back to what does God say? It was a while back, and I was standing over, and we kind of showed you the little conference area that I have in this building. But I was standing over there, and I had this thought of, man, I actually didn't choose to be born. My parents wanted to have a baby, and they ended up having me. And obviously, if you have faith and if you're a believer in Christ, you know that God is our Heavenly Father. And so then I had this thought of like, man, my kids also did not choose to be born. I wanted to have children, and my wife and I, we had these kids. And me as their father, like, I want the best for them. Like, I want the absolute best for my children. So then I almost had this like overwhelming feeling of like, wow, if I'm a father and I want that for my kids, how much amazing greatness does God, my Heavenly Father, want for me?
Right.
And I'm like, whoa, all right. I'm gonna go try to, like, what else can I do?
Yeah.
Like, what he's made me so unique, and holy smokes, I am absolutely unique, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Kind of weird,
Well,
and
you get to
that's
be
all right.
you. I don't think you're that weird. I mean, you're a little weird, but not that weird.
Not
But
too
I mean,
weird.
I think it's just that you're loved no matter what.
Yeah.
And some of us miss that. We
Mm.
have childhoods or experiences that definitely don't communicate that, but it's still
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
We're always loved no matter what. And so if we know that, what can we do? Right? It's that kind of that classic coaching question of like, if you knew you couldn't fail, what would you do?
Yeah.
And people go, well, but it's still kind of true. Like you can't fail if you just show up as yourself.
Yeah.
The failure really occurs when we pretend to be somebody else and we don't nail it because we're not going to.
Mm.
Being yourself, living your own life, like there's no real failure there. You'll just end where you end.
Yeah.
Right. This life of mine has been better than I could have planned it. And I'm really happy with that.
Yeah.
I'm sure there'll be hard seasons, and there have been, but at the same time, it's just, this is your unique life. So own it and live it.
Yeah. I love that. I think it's been great, Jason. I just appreciate you taking the time. It's been just absolutely fun getting to know you. It's been a couple years now, originally I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but originally I think you somehow stumbled upon FitBody.
Yeah.
And you came in as a client, and then we started like attending a couple of the same sessions. So we were kind of like working out together.
Mm-hmm.
And it started off as like a lobby conversation at the gym. We just had a lobby conversation. And next thing you know, that led to us grabbing lunch. And then led to us kind of staying connected through the socials. And the next thing you know, here we are. And so it's just crazy to me that you never know where your next relationship is going to come from.
Yeah.
You never know when you're going to get connected with that next person that's truly going to help you. And honestly, man, I don't know that I've ever told you this, but your quick little relational advices that you put on the IG, on Instagram, they've helped me through some difficult times, even with my own relationships, like with my wife or with my friends, my family. And so, in case you need to hear this, which maybe you do, maybe you don't, but keep doing what you're doing because your work is helping so many people. I think it's an honor to be able to say, hey, not only do I know Jason, I get to call Jason a friend. And I just look forward to connecting more. And man, I tell you what, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and get some copies of your book, because I'd love to be able to give some of those away. But I'd also love for our viewers to find your book.
Yeah.
So I'll drop a link. But where can people find your book?
Yeah, anywhere books are sold.
Okay.
So it's available most every place, really.
Yeah.
But just to comment on what you said, it does mean a lot. And I think when I joined your gym, I didn't know what to expect.
Yeah.
I know what I'd experienced, but I didn't know what to expect. And it was a game changer for me.
Yeah.
But a lot of that has to do with the community that you have and the culture you have. And so you should just know that forever, how much I'm doing to change the world, you're doing it too.
Appreciate that.
And I think that's what connects us well, is we both have a heart for helping people be better.
Yeah.
And I just saw that from you early on. And so I think if people are listening to this and they're like not familiar with you, they should be.
Yeah.
Because you've been a game changer in my life.
That's cool.
And in the same way, maybe the reels help you. Sometimes when you're screaming at me to do push-ups, that was the thing I needed. I'm serious.
Yeah.
But I left those and I go, someone cares and they're pushing.
Yep.
And sometimes that's what we need.
Yeah.
So I think to your point, it's like, we don't know where we find that. But the common theme for both of us is we just showed up.
Yeah.
I didn't know what to expect.
Yeah.
You didn't know. We didn't know we'd sit here today, but we just showed up.
Yeah.
And I think that's the start.
Yeah. And I think that's the biggest thing too. And we talked about that. You touched on that earlier, is like, I could have never known that when you walked through the doors of FitBody, that we would have gotten connected. Yeah. Many clients walk through the door and some relationships happen, and sometimes I never meet them.
Right.
But we got connected, and then life has brought us together in some different circumstances. And that is the theme. We showed up.
Yeah, you just showed up.
We showed up, and we're enjoying every day that we've been given.
Yep.
And doing the best we can, not even knowing exactly what that is to do. Right. But I'm going to show up today. And so if you're watching, listening, I don't know what you're going through. I don't know anything that's going on in your life, but I do know that you have the ability today to show up and do the best you can. That's all we've given.
Yeah, that's all you got. And I think if you know someone that knows what they're doing and they tell you what to do, just do it.
Yep.
Yeah, it's not that complicated. Just do it and see what happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
let the guard down a little bit.
Yeah.
Let the guard down, try it out.
Yeah, people like that person.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're all bad actors. Everyone's like, hey, I'm not perfect. Everyone's like, I know, I've known you. Right. And so we have to recognize like, we're not good actors anyway. So just let people love you.
Yeah.
Let people see you.
Yeah. And show up the way you can and love the way that you can love, because however you might show up for that person might be the way that they need you to show up and you didn't even know it.
Totally.
I love that. Well, hey, this has been awesome. I appreciate it. I do want to drop the link down below for your book, and then I want to grab 5 copies of your book because I want to be able to do some fun giveaways at the gym forum. And I just tell you what, you guys, do us a huge favor. Go ahead, like, comment, and share this episode because that helps Jason and myself be able to just keep on doing what we're doing and get exposed to more people, just to help more people. And so thank you guys for taking the time to spend with Jason and I. And Jason, have an amazing day. And all of you watching, listening, viewing, you guys have an amazing day as well.